Hey guys, yeah, thank you for clicking this video. And yes, today we are going to see about Azure Firewall. And this is a schematic representation. And let's create a scenario, a real-time scenario. Okay, this is a company Virtualnetwork, and we have a company vault server which has key vaults and all the other sensitive encryption keys and everything inside that. And we don't want anybody from outside the company network to access this vault server directly using RDP or SSH or anything. And the requirement is that they have to go through Azure Firewall, and with the help of firewall they have to go through the connections and have their connections established inside the vault servers, right? And we also going to restrict them to you not to use any other websites like Gmail or Google or any Google Drive or anything, because we don't want anybody to upload or download stuff to this servers. So what we are going to do is we are only going to restrict them to use Microsoft.com website and nothing else. And this is the scenario, and for this scenario what we are going to do is actually create a vault server, and then we name that as we create a virtual machine and then name that as a vault server, and we are going to disassociate the public IP address so that nobody from outside can access the vault server. And then we are going to allow the RDP sessions in the NSG inbound rules, and then followed by we're going to create a Azure Firewall and then have a classic rules applied in that, and then followed by a route table that helps us to route to this vault server. So let's just jump on to the Azure portal. And so I already created a virtual machine and I named that as a vault server 9092. The only thing that we need to do is it has a public IP address which we don't want. So let's get into the networking and click on the network interface, IP configurations, and click on this IP config. And then we don't want the public IP address, so let's go and disassociate the public IP address and then save. So once this settings is saved on the NIC, we'll go about and create a firewall. Let's just give it some time. Let's just hold on. Let me pause the video and then come back right once it is saved. Okay guys, so the information has been saved onto the network interface, so we should not see any more public IP on the vault server. Yes, so we don't have any IP address. So let's go and create a firewall. So plus create firewall wizard, and then we click on the net resource group, the existing resource group, and then we'll name this as firewall for vault -vault pass. So South Central, the region is South Central, and we're going to use a standard one because it's a demo. I'm not going to use the premium one. And for the firewall policies, I'm not going to use firewall policy, we're going to use a firewall classic rules. And then for the virtual network, let's go and use the existing virtual network, which is Virtualnetwork 1. As soon as you click on this one, it says that the virtual network must have a subnet named Azure Firewall subnet, and this is actually a prerequisite that needs to be in place before we create a firewall. I didn't create one because I want to show you that this is a prerequisite. So once we go ahead to the virtual network and create a subnet and name that as a Azure Firewall subnet, this is exact naming convention should be there, so that the firewall wizard will pick up the subnet and start using that. So let's move on to the virtual network wizard and let's create a subnet and name that as firewall subnet. Click on to that place in virtual network, and this is the virtual network 1, and then let's go and create a subnet. Let me go ahead and copy that name from the documentation, and then you name that as Azure Firewall Virtual subnet. That's it, and we don't have to do anything else. Just click on save, it will go and create a subnet, and you can see that. And then let's move on back to the firewall wizard. Let's create one more time. Use the same resource group, use FWP vault. FWP-vault is the name I'm going to give it, and we don't want any availability zone standard, and then we're going to use the classic ones and use the virtual network. And then we'll drop down to virtualnet 1, and now you can see that it doesn't complain about the subnet because we already have one in place, and it does require a public IP address. So let's go and create one. So vault server-IP is the public IP address. Let's move on to tag, and then but it's complaining. Let's create one for it. So WP pub-IP. Let's click on this one and then review and create. So it's going to take some more time, so I will pause the video and then come back once it is provisioned. Okay guys, so finally the firewall is being provisioned and it's completed. It took me like good 25 minutes. So yes, we have our firewall. The next thing that we want to do is actually create a route table. So click on this route table. So you basically have to go and search route table, and then you will get this thing, and then hit on the create route table. We're not going to do anything right now. We're just going to create a route table. So we just name it as route to vault. Okay, and then review and create. And I hope this will not take much time like the firewall thing. So just wait for a second. Okay, that was very quick. So we have a route table being deployed. So let's get on to the resource. And the first thing first is to actually create a route. So let's go and add a route and then name it as route to route 66, just like that. And then what we're going to say is for the address prefix, any traffic that comes from the internet. So it's always going to be like 0.0.0./0, and our next hop would be actually virtual appliance. And in the next hop address, we should actually put a private IP address of the firewall. So the private IP address of the firewall is 10.1.1.4. So let's click on this and let's wait for some time to have that added to the route. Hopefully it shouldn't take time. It's just okay. So now that we have our route, let's verify it. Okay, it's although it says successfully added route, I don't see anything here. Let's wait for some more time. Let's do a refresh. Hopefully I can see it. Okay, now I can see that we have our route 66. Any address prefix is from the internet. The next hop will always be on virtual appliance, which is our private IP address of our firewall. So it's 10.1.1.4. Now let's move on to the main thing. Let's go on to the firewall and click on this firewall, and then let's go on to the rules and classic. So there are actually three NAT rules, three collection rules. One is for the NAT, and another one for network, another one for appliance. So the first thing that we want to do is actually do a NAT rule collections. So if we go back to our schematic diagram, so the connection, any connection that comes from this outside computer to the vault should go through Azure Firewall, right? So this is the first requirement. For that, we actually need to create a NAT rule. So let's create a NAT rule, add NAT rule, and then let's name that as NAT rule 101, and then let's give it a priority anything between 100 to 65,000. So let's go for 101, and then just name it as NAT rule 101, and then the protocol would be like TCP, and the source type, let's just that any source, although it's not fair. Let's just, for now it's a demo, so let's make it as start, and for the destination would actually be your firewall's public IP address. So let's move on to the firewall. Click on the public IP configurations, and then you will have your firewall public IP. Copy that, and then your destination is this one. Make sure you don't add any space, and then you can have any port. So let's have a destination port as 4001, but you have to remember this port actually. And then we'll have a translated address, which is actually our vault server. So we want the vault server's IP address, which is 10.0.5. So let's do that. And then the translated port is 3389, which is our RDP protocol. So click on add. I'll wait for that to be added. And then what we're going to do is, while it is adding, and we told that we want to restrict the folks who are accessing to the vault server not to mess around with Google or google.com, like Google Drive or anything else. So we want them to use only microsoft.com and nothing else. So for that, we actually need to go ahead and create a application rule collections. So once the Nat Rule Collection is done, we'll go ahead and create an application rule collection. Just give it a second, guys. If it didn't, I'll pass on the video and I'll resume it back once it is done. Okay, so it has been added. Let's do a refresh. Yep, we have our Nat rule in place. Let's go on to the application rule and click on add application rule, and let's name it as app 101 in 101, and then we'll have allow, or we can go ahead and do a deny. That's fine. So let's go ahead and do a deny for Samad. Okay, and then we're going to have a deny rule, and then the source IP is IP address. This is probably, it should be the IP address of our vault server. Let's go and do that as well. And then the protocol is HTTP, HTTPS. And then we don't want any folks to go and type google.com, right? Let's go and add it. So we actually creating a deny rule where we don't want anybody to go and do a search on Google once they land on that server. So it's getting added. Let's give it a second. I will pause it and resume it back. Okay, guys, so everything is in place. We have our application rule, which is going to be a deny rule, and we have our Nat collections. Everything is in place. Let's go on to test it. So click on to the firewall and then grab the public IP address. Let's wait for some time, and then use whatever the RDP one, like I'm gonna use Microsoft RDP. So let's do this. Microsoft desktop, and starting pop up, I'm gonna go and add a PC, and then copy the public IP address and then the port 4001 and click add, and then connect. Okay, let's click on to the connect, and so you can see that it's actually going through our firewall. So let's just put in the password, username, click on continue, and now I think we are redirected to the virtual machine. Okay, so we have landed on to the vault server. Let's just give it some more time to have the server manager to boot it up, and then we'll test the firewall settings. Yeah, guys, so we are finally inside the vault, and you can see the vault server name, and that marks up the end of this tutorial. So going back to the schematic diagram, we have created a firewall, we made the application rules, network rules, and NAT rules, and then we created the route table, and then we created the vault server, and then we disabled the IP address. And now that we have tested that we were able to get into the vault server using the Azure Firewall's public IP address. And that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to post it on the comment section, and I'll be happy to help you guys.